mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. Well, thank you all so much for joining me here today on Tuesday, May the 21st of 2024 for Lesson 142 in A Course in Miracles. We're reading from the version printed by Foundation for Inner Peace. My mind holds only what I think with God. And it's a review of Lesson 123 and 124. And remember, as we take 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes before we go to sleep at night, and we settle into the idea for a full 5 minutes, my mind holds only what I think with God. And then after we've done that 5 minutes, then we to take as long as we like to think about the other two ideas. Today being, I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. And then on top of that, those two 5-minute extended periods, which will really end up being, maybe 10 minutes if you want to. If you were going to set your clock for something, set it for 10 minutes. And first half of it, hang out with the idea, my mind holds only what I think with God. Have your book open or write it on a piece of paper and open your eyes afterwards and remind yourself, oh, I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. And then think about those two ideas and how they relate to each other and how they affect your life. And then during the day, every hour of the day, think about my mind holds only what I think with God. And you don't have to take 5 minutes. You can, but take a moment and settle into that and then remind yourself, I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. Okay, well, that's what we're to do today with our lesson. Let's go look at our text reading. And we're ready for, we were ready for chapter 4. We're in chapter 15, the Holy Instant, ready for section 7, the needless sacrifice. And let's just go ahead and, we're ready for paragraph 4, but let's start with paragraph 1 again and read the whole section now. Beyond the poor attraction of the special relationship, and always obscured by it, is the powerful attraction of the Father for His Son. There is no other love that can satisfy you because there is no other love. This is the only love that is fully given and fully returned. Being complete, it asks nothing. Being wholly pure, everyone joined in it has everything. This is not the basis for any relationship in which the ego enters. For every relationship on which the ego embarks is special. 2. The ego establishes relationships only to get something, and it would keep the giver bound to itself through guilt. It is impossible for the ego to enter into any relationship without anger, for the ego believes that anger makes friends. This is not its statement, but it is its purpose, for the ego really believes that it can get and keep by making guilty. This is the one attraction. This is its one attraction, an attraction so weak that it would have no hold at all except that no one recognizes it. For the ego always seems to attract through love, and has no attraction at all to anyone who perceives that it attracts through guilt. 3. The sick attraction of guilt must be recognized for what it is. For having been made real to you, it is essential to look at it clearly, and by withdrawing your investment in it, to learn to let it go. No one would choose to let go what he believes has value. Yet the attraction of guilt has value to you only because you have not looked at what it is and have judged it completely in the dark. As we bring it to light, your only question will be why it was you ever wanted it. You have nothing to lose by looking open-eyed, for ugliness such as this belongs not in your holy mind. This host of God can have no real investment here. Paragraph 4. We said before that the ego attempts to maintain and increase guilt, but in such a way that you do not recognize what it would do to you. For it is the ego's fundamental doctrine that what you do to others, you have escaped. Okay, so the ego's fundamental doctrine is exactly opposite from what Jesus taught us back in, recorded in the Bible in, where was that in? Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. And it says, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. So the exact opposite is for it is the ego's fundamental doctrine that what you do to others, you have escaped. Where Jesus is really trying to get us to see that what we do to others is what we would want to do to ourselves. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. You know, that's what love does. But the ego doesn't operate according to love. It operates according to the opposite of love, which love doesn't really have an opposite, but from the ego's perspective it does, and it's attack or guilt. Loss of peace. For it is the ego's fundamental doctrine that what you do to others you have escaped. The ego wishes no one well, yet its survival depends on your belief that you are exempt from its evil intentions. It counsels, therefore, that if you are host to it, it will enable you to direct its anger outward, thus protecting you, and thus it embarks on an endless, unrewarding chain of special relationships, forged out of anger, and dedicated to but one insane belief, that the more anger you invest outside yourself, the safer you become. And we talked about how that wars are based on that idea. You know, we need to get some sanity in the way that we work together as communities. Paragraph 5. And we also, in our own hearts, we need to get the sanity of recognizing that we want to operate according to love and not according to attack and guilt. Paragraph 5. It is this chain that binds the Son of God to guilt, and it is this chain the Holy Spirit would remove from His holy mind. This chain of special relationships that are all based on guilt. For the chain of savagery belongs not around the chosen host of God, who cannot make himself host to the ego. In the name of his release and in the name of him who would release him, let us look more closely at the relationships the ego contrives, and let the Holy Spirit judge them truly. For it is certain that if you will look at them, you will offer them gladly to him. What he can make of them you do not know, but you will become willing to find out if you are willing first to perceive what you have made of them. Paragraph 6. In one way or another, every relationship the ego makes is based on the idea that by sacrificing itself, it becomes bigger. The, in quotes, sacrifice, which it regards as purification, is actually the root of its bitter resentment. For it would prefer to attack directly and avoid delaying what it really wants. Yet the ego acknowledges, in quotes, reality as it sees it, and recognizes that no one could interpret direct attack as love, yet to make guilty is direct attack, although it does not seem to be. For the guilty expect attack, and having asked for it, they are attracted to it. 7. In such insane relationships, the attraction of what you do not want seems to be much stronger than the attraction of what you do want. For each one thinks that he has sacrificed something to the other, and hates him for it. Yet this is what he thinks he wants. He is not in love with the other at all. He merely believes he is in love with sacrifice, and for this sacrifice, which he demands of himself, he demands that the other accept the guilt and sacrifice himself as well. Forgiveness becomes impossible, for the ego believes that to forgive another is to lose him. It is only by attack without forgiveness that the ego can ensure the guilt that holds all its relationships together. Paragraph 8. Yet they only seem to be together, for relationships to the ego mean only that bodies are together. It is always this that the ego demands, and it does not object where the mind goes or where it thinks, for this seems unimportant. As long as the body is there to receive its sacrifice, it is content. To the ego, the mind is private, and only the body can be shared. Ideas are basically of no concern except as they bring the body of another closer or farther. And it is in these terms that it evaluates ideas as good or bad. What makes another guilty and holds him through guilt is considered, in quotes, good. What releases him from guilt is, in quotes, bad, because he would no longer believe that bodies communicate, and so he would be gone, in quotes, gone. Paragraph 9. Suffering and sacrifice are the gifts with which the ego would bless all unions. Bless is in quotes because it's not really blessing, but from the ego's perspective it is. And how do you bless in the ego's union? And those who are united at its altar accept suffering and sacrifice as the price of union. In their angry alliances, born of the fear of loneliness, and yet dedicated to the continuance of loneliness, each seeks release from guilt by increasing it in the other. For each believes that this decreases guilt in him. The other seems always to be attacking and wounding him, perhaps in little ways, perhaps unconsciously, yet never without demand of sacrifice. And that word unconsciously is in quotes because nothing can truly be unconscious, but it can appear to be from the ego's perspective it is. The fury of those joined at the ego's altar far exceeds your awareness of it, for what the ego really wants, you do not realize. 10. Whenever you are angry, you can be sure that you have formed a special relationship with the ego. Whenever you are angry, you can be sure that you have formed a special relationship with which the ego has blessed, for anger is its blessing. A while ago I asked you, what is a blessing from the ego? Well, he's saying here directly it's anger. Whenever you are angry, you can be sure that you have formed a special relationship with which the ego has blessed, for anger is its blessing. Anger takes many forms, but it cannot long deceive those who will learn that love brings no guilt at all, and what brings guilt cannot be love and must be anger. All anger is nothing more than an attempt to make someone feel guilty, and this attempt is the only basis the ego accepts for special relationships. Guilt is the only need the ego has, and as long as you identify with it, guilt will remain attractive to you. Yet remember this, to be with a body is not communication. And if you think it is, you will feel guilty about communication and will be afraid to hear the Holy Spirit, recognizing in His voice your own need to communicate. 11. The Holy Spirit cannot teach through fear. And how can He communicate with you while you believe that to communicate is to make yourself alone? The Holy Spirit cannot teach through fear. And how can He communicate with you while you believe that to communicate is to make yourself alone? It is clearly insane to believe that by communicating you will be abandoned. And yet many do believe it, for they think their minds must be kept private, or they will lose them. But if their bodies are together, their minds remain their own. The union of bodies thus becomes the way in which they would keep minds apart. The bodies For bodies cannot forgive. They can only do as the mind directs. 12. The illusion of the autonomy of the body and its ability to overcome loneliness is because the working of the ego's plan to establish its own autonomy. Again on that sentence. The illusion of the autonomy of the body and its ability to overcome loneliness is but the working of the ego's plan to establish its own autonomy. As long as you believe that to be without a body is companionship, you will be compelled to attempt to keep your brother in his body held there by guilt, and you will see safety in guilt and danger in communication. For the ego will always teach that loneliness is solved by guilt, and that communication is the cause of loneliness. And despite the evident insanity of this lesson, many have learned it. Oh my. 13. Forgiveness lies in communication as surely as damnation lies in guilt. It is the Holy Spirit's teaching function to instruct those who believe communication to be damnation that communication is salvation, and He will do so, for the power of God in him and you is joined in a real relationship so holy and so strong that it can overcome even this without fear. That strong relationship that's wielded when we listen to the Holy Spirit's guidance. And the last paragraph, 14, and that'll finish this section. It is through the holy instant that what seems impossible is accomplished, making it evident that it is not impossible. In the holy instant, guilt holds no attraction, since communication has been restored. And guilt, whose only purpose is to disrupt communication, has no function here. Here there is no concealment and no private thoughts. The willingness to communicate attracts communication to it and overcomes loneliness completely. The willingness to communicate attracts communication to it and overcomes loneliness completely. There is complete forgiveness here, for there is no desire to exclude anyone from your completion, in sudden recognition of the value of his part in it. We're all in this together, and every part has a gift to you from God, and you have a gift to them from God. That's what that holy instant reestablishes, is our present happiness with no past to create an idea of guilt with. Stay in the holy instant, the moment. There is complete, the willingness to communicate attracts communication to it and overcomes loneliness completely. There is complete forgiveness. There is complete forgiveness here, for there is no desire to exclude anyone from your completion, in sudden recognition of the value of his part in it. In the protection of your wholeness, all are invited and made welcome, and you understand that your completion is God's, whose only need is to have you be complete, for your completion makes you His in your awareness. For your completion makes you His in your awareness. And here it is that you experience yourself as you were created and as you are. Okay, well, we'll go back and look at our lesson for today. My mind holds only what I think with God. I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. And before we close, let's look about what all's going on around the world briefly, out of holidays and observances. American Red Cross Founders Day. I love the idea of the Red Cross, to help those in need, regardless of who they are. Founded in 1881 by Clara Barton, I believe it was. End of the world, or Rapture Party Day. We ought to look at every day as the end of the ego world, the end of the rule of the ego, and the enrapturement of spirit. And as we follow the Holy One, we don't have to wait for some kind of external experience to be raptured into heaven. This day and every day, as we stay in the present moment, let the end of the world come. whatever way that means. Take up your cross daily and follow him just means let's let the world go away. Let's follow love. I need a patch for that day. silly day. That's today. I need a patch for that day. International Tea Day. Have a cup of tea with someone today. National Memo Day. National Strawberry and Cream Day. National Waiter and Waitress Day. Sister Maria Hummel Day. She was a German nun, lived 1909 to 1946, who was an artist. World Day of Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development. And then I wanted to tell you about another, what is this one? A bush cherry. And it's the Cherupugy Nanking Red Bush Cherry. The Cherupugy is Northern European variety with large red fruit, big enough to be pitted with hand pitters, easier to process, pollinate with another Nanking, spaced 6 to 8 feet apart, zones 3 through 7. So that's your Cherupugy Nanking Red Bush Cherry, which is a Prunus Tourmatiso. Okay, well, let's close with our song again. And, you know, do the best you can today at really hanging out with that idea for 5 full minutes in the morning and in the evening. And then a little short reminder every hour of the day. My mind holds only what I think with God. And then add to it, I thank my Father for his gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. I thank my Father for his gifts to me. I thank my Father for his gifts to me. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. Let me remember I am one with God. Let me remember what I think with God. I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. And our word for peace today is from German, Frieden. My mind holds only what I think with God. I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. And if you were in kind of a meditative space while I was playing that song, you might even count that as one of your practice periods. We think it lasted about 5 minutes, maybe a little longer. You could go back and listen to that and meditate and stay a little longer. Anyway, but do take 5 minutes with my mind holds only what I think with God morning and evening. And then the associated ideas for the day today being, I thank my Father for His gifts to me. Let me remember I am one with God. Frieden.